again, so it's a bit of a prompt to get yourselves seated. Martin? All right. Cool, all right. Kia ora team, we're going to get back into it. Jocelyn, yep, cool. Well, cool. Hope you all had a good little morning tea break. So we are now on to item 8.3 on page 33, Direction of Travel, Kāpiti Coast Economic Development Strategy Refresh. And we've got Mark and Darren at the table. Welcome. And we'll pass to Chris first and then hand on over to you.
Kia ora. In contrast to some of the earlier items, we are seeking your approval today around a direction of travel. And I think this has been a long time coming. We've had a lot of previous discussion around the current economic development strategy, the refresh that's underway, and we're really pleased to be able to present to you today the draft direction of travel, which we have been working with the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board on. The intention is that once you approve this document, that we'll be using this as a basis to undertake what I'll call engagement rather than consultation, some engagement through the engagement hub and other means to get some wider feedback from the community on that before we come back with the formal strategy that we'll be asking you to sign off. So it's an interim step. I will just hand over to Darren to see if he has any additional comments. Otherwise, we look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I was just going to say that in terms of the direction of travel, it really builds on the conversations that we've been having to date. It really talks about the priority areas and priority areas of focus and making sure that we're building on our current strategy, that we're discussing the future operating model, so bringing in discussion about the trust and the use of special purpose vehicles, and really trying to make sure we have meaningful measures. So trying to make sure we can really understand the progress that we're making and that our actions are having impacts in terms of the local economy. And so those are quite, some of those are quite, an evolution of where we were in the current strategy. And I think the measures are a big one in terms of doing that. So, yeah.
Great, opening up for questions. Councillor Cooper.
Hi, I actually had a conversation with Chris offline this morning. And I wasn't going to ask this question, but then it occurred to me that maybe some people in the public or other council members who have read this and had needed some clarification of it. So just in terms of the strategy around mana whenua, setting a priority in the direction of travel is for economic, Māori economic development, which is on page 37.23. And then at 23.2, says there's acknowledgement that Māori businesses can have multiple purposes beyond profitability. And it occurred to me that this is an economic development board, not necessarily a social development board. And if the strategy is prioritising economic development for Māori, but they don't have to, there are other things beyond profitability. How does this work? How does this work? Because it seems to be at odds with economic development. And secondly, following question, so that's the question. And the following question is, should we not be targeting the word priority sort of as a direction? So if we have a development that's offering $15 for every dollar invested, that's not Māori, but we've got an economic proposal that's $5 for every dollar invested, is the strategy saying we should prioritise the Māori, acknowledging, because it's in here, acknowledging that it's not about profitability? And should it be about profitability? Because my feeling that it should be.
And I
There's
think
a lot in the unpack, and I know
Yep,
we've had that
and
conversation.
it might be helpful for me to share the response that I made this
Yeah.
morning, and then I'll hand over to the team to round out any other pieces that I've missed. To the first point, I think the intention is that in the current economic development strategy, we've really been setting the foundation for economic development, and that's not to say we didn't have it before, but it's in the setting that we've been in. And that is perspective from the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board. We're now in our refresh, if you like, coming up to the next step and looking at where our focus can be and what next. The Māori economy has been something that's been on the list for a while, a long time. I think in the section of the paper, and you have directed us to some of the points under paragraph 23, the intention of those comments is to acknowledge that actually, as we start to engage and focus in different ways, we will need to balance and apply weighting to things like some of the benefits we want from economic development, and you've used an example as profitability, but also that there'll be equal focus on things like sustainability and the environment and the way in which we do business. So I think that's the point that has been put across here. It's not to say that in an economic development strategy we're not focused on the fundamentals that might sit underneath that. And I think in the direction of travel you will see that there is a wide spectrum of measures that we're proposing to use to understand how well we're progressing. There is no intention to suddenly be veering into only one part of the economy. I think it was we're identifying areas that needed some uplift, and that is the point of that in here. So that's that first bit. Profitability, definitely an important thing in economic development. We have some metrics around things like GDP, growth in business, focus on our ecosystem and how that's operating. So there's a wide spectrum of things in there. We aren't particularly just focusing in that space. So just check with Darren if you had any further comments to add to that.
I just definitely support that comment in terms of when we look at economic development, we do look at all the four well-beings across the way. In terms of economic well-being, we know that things like, ability for having a job, in terms of the social well-being of that, is a huge thing. When we're talking about the identity of the district, that has a link to our culture and our history and all those sorts of things. So when we look at these different actions, we always do have a look in terms of the full range of the well-being impacts of it, obviously with a focus around ED has been the lead, but also understanding the wider impacts. And, in terms of our engagement with mana whenua and iwi, there's definitely a focus for them in terms of that as well. And that shows a good way in terms of how we can have it maximise the impact of our work.
Great. Thanks, I appreciate for that. Just, is priority the right word? I know it's semantics, but it's not. Could that be worded better so that the layman or someone reading it who hasn't heard that your discourse, because to me a priority is a direction, but there may be a better word that encapsulates what you said.
I think the word priority references back to the work that the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board had progressed. So they have outlined in the direction of travel we've called them 8 overall actions, actually. So the reference to priority being turned into actions of focus. So we can definitely take that point on board and ensure that as we're talking about that, we call it one of the 8 actions that will be progressing.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Councillor Spires.
Thank you. To have economic development, we need people to spend money. So has any thought been given to a mobile information centre that could be taken into Wellington, over Wairarapa, up the Manawatu to promote the Kāpiti Coast as a whole?
So the visitor economy is a sector of focus in the strategy or in the direction of travel document. It's an area that we're working through at the moment as well. In terms of the work we've done today, we've done the destination management plan, and we're currently doing the work on the Kāpiti story as well. In terms of how that progresses in terms of execution, we'll be looking at a range of different options in terms of how that could be executed moving forward. That doesn't mean a particular option that has been said yes or no at this stage, it would be one of the options that we could consider in terms of moving forward.
Have you got a timeline on that?
So the work in terms of the destination story is underway at the moment, and we're looking to come back to council in the new year on that.
Okay, thank you. It's just that, yeah, there is a phrase in here and it's called direction of travel.
Yep. Yep.
Thank
Councillor Warwick.
I do agree with Glenn about the wording around 23. It could be a focus of the direction of travel. But also I'm just wondering about the 3-yearly economic development refresh. And is that a good thing, or is it a bad thing when you've got to rehash it all again every 3 years?
I might comment. Yeah, I'm going to comment and say this is, I feel like, an interim refresh point to pick up, that lift to the next step. We have been talking to the Economic Development Kotahi Board about having a longer term focus, maybe getting out to that 10-year mark. But that's a work in progress. So I think if the chair, Neil, was here, he'd say to you, they've really focused on getting those foundations in place. So they're now starting to lift their focus out and furthering those steps. So I think you can look forward to that longer term focus coming back to this table.
Was that all from you, Councillor Warwick? Yeah, if you could pop your mic off, thank you. Councillor Cofitt.
Oh, thanks, Chair Sophie. Darren, thanks for that report. You've come up with themes of engagement, through. In my reading, I don't see any reference to infrastructure and dealing with developers who are thronging to the Kāpiti Coast at the moment. And will there be a accommodation for this in light of the infrastructure, which is the glue that's keeping all of these other factors together in terms of walkways, cycleways and connections, and the wonderful opportunity we have at the moment to put these in place? In other words, our urban panel, is there any accommodation for?
I think the 3 questions noted here were very much targeted around the economic development strategy refresh. So we're wanting to get some feedback, particularly around the, I would say, the focus areas for economic development. Some of the big changes we're making around shifting towards the Economic Development Kotahi Board as a trust and use of SPVs. That doesn't discount wider things that are underway that are very important and do have their place. So I think the conversation around that is just happening in other mechanisms, not through this one. So we do meet with developers. We are bringing them in. We are having conversations about that. So it might be that we can link you into that, Councillor Cofitt.
Thank you.
I suppose,
Yeah, go for it, yep.
I was just going to say, I think a big thing in terms of a change in terms of the refresh and the pieces of work going on is making sure they do link up the different strategies. In the past, there's always been questions about, is this work all linked up? And there's a real focus to make sure that things like the climate change, the environment, health, and housing strategy are talking to each other and understanding how they work together in terms of an approach.
Awesome, thanks Darren. And just acknowledging that Huriwai Paki has joined us online. Kia ora Huriwai. Oh yeah, we can see you, awesome. If you have any partai or any contributions you want to make, just pop your virtual hand up and we'll come to you. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you very much for this report. And I agree with a lot of the, I suppose, the focus in it. But there's a couple of things that I just wanted to highlight. One is starting on page 45, where where the report talks about how we will drive change. And I suppose to me, and if you look at the first table there, it says how will we know that we're successful, and it says upward. To me, I'm wondering, do we actually know where our current status is for each of these points and what our targets are? Because saying upward is not, to me, strategic.
I can answer the first question to say yes, we know where our current position is with these measures. So they're available, they're reported, and that information may be on LG Hub. I'm looking at you, Darren. Have we put that on LG Hub? If it's not, we can. The reason that we've put a direction of change and trend is because, rather than a target, is because much of this work and the steps that will be implemented are not so much about council pushing forward and delivering something. It is our business community. It may have the chamber involved, it may have caterer, it may have other players in our ecosystem. So, in working together, overall, the contribution we'd like to see is a shift in trends going up or down or staying the same. We didn't think it would be appropriate to set some targets for things that would be out of the, I'll say, control of council and if we didn't meet specific targets, what that would mean. And also what our ecosystem, business and others, would think about us setting a target for them in the context of the economic development system. So this has really been focused more about the system than it has been about a specific thing that, for example, the economic development team might do. There are targets, though, set in the long-term plan for the economic development team. So they are in place, but this was more about, as a result of our collective work together, what change will we see happening? How will we know we're heading in the right direction? That was what how we'll know we're successful was kind of focused on.
Okay.
Okay.
I think Darren just wants to provide some comment on
Okay.
it as well.
I was just going to say it's often easier also for us to set targets in terms of specific piece of work. So when we're doing projects and those sorts of things, or a more targeted piece such as major events, it's easier for us to set specific targets there as opposed to having them in the strategy. And so what we can do is we can ensure that we are complying with in terms of the requirements of the measures that are in the direction of travel and the general trend that wants to be achieved, but able to set more targeted actual measures in those pieces of work.
Okay, so I'll leave that. But I suppose a comment, then another question, is that I suppose it's a bit like the climate change and resilience strategy that we've just signed off, or the direction of travel we've just agreed to, is that these things don't happen in isolation, and so it's a case of where KCDC is actually a major influencer in how the direction of travel for these various pieces of work. And so to me, and I'll use the word aspiration, there needs to be an aspiration about where you want to land, or how you want to
Did you
progress.
say you had a question, Councillor
I
Bravano?
do.
Sorry, we just need to.
Yes.
Yeah.
So my question is, based on this work, how much will this increase the average income for residents, and how much will it increase our economic development in our district? Getting right to the crux of the matter.
And that is the whole point of focusing on economic development, is to make it easier to live and earn a living in our district. So absolutely. We don't, or have not, gone through the process with the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board of setting a specific target for those things at this stage. I think that could be part of next steps, if that is something you're interested in. So in terms of the work we have now, that isn't something that we're focused on. When the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board recently came in to brief you on the work they're progressing, I think as part of their next step up, being in a position to say, these are the small set of measures we know we want to hold ourselves to account around, and also what we'd like to see shifting, was a big step forward. And so I think maybe the next step is, what are those measures, be it a handful, that we do want to say we'd like to see, I don't know, over the next 10 years, a shift of X, Y, Z. So that could be part of us taking away something to do some more work on, but we do not have that now.
So, in behind all this, is there a desire, and I suppose a strategy, to increase the average income, because at present it's basically in the lower
Do you want to answer?
levels?
yeah, look, there's definitely been a big focus for the board through the discussions to date, and obviously the work that we're doing. How do we increase income levels? How do we understand the jobs or the industries that provide the best opportunities for that? How do we increase income levels across the board, in terms of making people have access to education and training and all those sorts of things. So that is a significant focus, as well as the focus on increasing productivity of our businesses as well, which are linked to that.
Does it also include bringing new businesses in here, having a key business?
Yep, so definitely a focus on business attraction, but also making sure we're supporting our local businesses to grow as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope you'll indulge me a little bit. I have some questions and some flags, which I wouldn't mind putting forward, but I won't be taking too long. First question I have is around number 19 on page 36, and it talks to the SPVs with regards, in the first off the block being potentially the food hub, Kāpiti Food Production Innovation Hub. I'm curious, where is that? Is that the one that we've already supported? And do me just a little more detail about what's in mind with that? I guess that's why I'm clarifying, because that was my assumption, but that might not be the case.
So no, it's not the current grant that we've provided. It's a different proposal, and there'll be a separate discussion with council about that in the future. Yeah.
Cool. So do we have an idea where that's going, or is that sort of just that's what our focus is, and we're going to work through where
We're working through that at the moment.
Lovely. Okay, and I'm fine with that. Thank you. Number 23, actually, as Councillor Cooper was talking to, and was around the Māori ED stuff. The wording, I think, is something we do need to look at. But I just did want to note, we do have a Māori Economic Development Fund. And that sort of stuff. I think maybe even the Māori Economic Development Strategy might need a refresh, or might need to be tied into this somehow. But I guess this is all part of trying to bring things together. So I just wanted to flag that. I think it's absolutely fantastic that you've been linked up with the Māori business group that are up there. I think they've been. I've only discovered them recently as well, which is fantastic. But maybe how we do that Māori economic development might need to be looked at, because there is a block of funds in there. I'm not saying take them away, but just how we approach that.
Yeah, so that is the focus in terms of our current strategy is 2013. It's very out of date. It's not relevant in terms of what's happening at the moment, or the current state in terms of the economy. So it's making sure that that can be refreshed to make sure that works going forward, and what's needed going forward. Yeah.
Cool. Page 38, numbers 24 and I think 25.4, and I'm actually going to tie it into page 46 as well, priority actions for sustainable circular economy. You're going to see me harping on about this a little bit more, but we've got a waste minimalisation strategy coming up, and I just think it's important that we do link these in a very visible way to some of these things as such, because there is business opportunity here, but also even the last paper that we had, the pathways that we're going with regards to that, and that's going to be potentially a big vehicle to do that, bearing in mind the development that we've got going on down at Ōtaki as well, just making sure all that's feeding through in a nice, as part of the kaupapa as we move forward.
To make a comment to that, to say, I think the focus in this particular direction of travel and strategy more broadly had been outwardly focused on our engagement with business. So, for example, you've been to our sustainable business sessions where we're looking at how do we help the businesses in our community partake of some of those good things, which will include things like waste management and how they work together, and a bunch of good things related to the circular economy principles and business models. So, hear your point. That's definitely embedded, but has an external focus rather than council focus.
Appreciate that. My comment back on that would be to empower that, you need pathways and you need infrastructure in place as well. Otherwise, you might talk a thing, but it's a lot harder to do because those pathways aren't in place. So it was just a flag from that aspect of thing. A bit of a grizzle coming up from my end. Page 44, number 9, is about the only place, and that's right in the corner where I could see anything around, page 44. Number 9, develop the Kāpiti story and improve tourism opportunity as such. And another reference was around page 49, other strategies. I'm doing a plug here, and a shameless plug here for Wellsong and the development of that town centre area. I just want to flag that Wellsong's had the support of this table over the past 2 trienniums, full support of this table, yet I don't see it anywhere. I don't see it coming through anywhere. I would like to see that start to change. It's just a flag at the moment with regards to coming through. There's a lot of opportunity there. We've got castles, and we had our first sort of bring together of those different groups the other day, and things are going to happen relatively quick in that space. So I'd like to see the direction of the table, addressed in regards to more visibility of Wellsong through our processes. Not taking away staff's efforts with regards to working in the space. It has been fraught with regards to getting to this point. And I certainly do want to acknowledge that we're actually in a really good space moving forward. But I just want to make sure that if we're going out for consultation, that sort of stuff, that it's visible as part of that process, even if we're asking the community to comment on it or something like that. But this is that's correct. Maybe we ask a question as we do ask them, or something on that.
I
But
think
we can have some
Darren's
comment
keen
on that.
to respond. Yeah, Darren's keen to respond.
Fantastic.
Yeah, look, I suppose this is similar to the response to Councillor Spears in terms of we haven't specifically gone into detail on different initiatives under the specific areas like visitor and town sector and stuff like that. We have tried to keep it sort of high level and make sure we don't get into too much detail when trying to engage on a number of these things with the community sort of thing. So so in terms of the work we're doing, obviously we're doing significant work with Wellsong already, and they are part of our ongoing sort of work program of activity. We just haven't specified all the different things that we're doing in this document because it could get quite overwhelming sort of thing.
I appreciate that.
I do just want to add another comment, and I do know this from talking to the chair of the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board. I think we are working alongside Wellsong at the moment. We're looking to support the business case around their funding requirements. So we're supporting, but have not agreed at this stage anyway, to fund next steps with Wellsong. I think the board is looking forward to seeing a firmer business case for what's next, which hasn't been tabled yet. So from the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board's perspective, and I think the Tourism Board's perspective as well, they're watching with interest and waiting to see some firmer things come through. And that is why you won't see it specifically outlined in here, because they're waiting to see where it fits and the timeline for it. Secondly, I think just want to note that, yes, not from an economic development perspective, but from a town centre design and more broadly some of the work we have with developers, we're definitely supporting bringing people together and seeing how we can combine some of the great ideas that are coming through the community. So we are supporting Wellsong. You won't see it specifically line itemed in this kind of document.
Thank you for that, Chris. I guess, again, to be perfectly blunt, a small concern I have is that around that table, if you like, there's been certain mindsets in the past with regards to an approach towards it, even though the support for the table has been put forward. I just want to reiterate that again, that the direction's not up to that board with regard to things that have received direction. So it's just more how does that work moving forward. It's just about mindsets.
We can pass that feedback on and take it as given we've noted that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. The last, two more things, sorry. There's talk here, we've done a lot of work with regards to college, interaction with college through Work Ready Kāpiti, training and all that sort of scenario, that sort of stuff. I've just been finding a little bit more about the mayoral job tasks for jobs, and that's actually about the placement of people into jobs. And one thing I sort of thought we just sort of haven't quite got that connection there is we've got some fantastic work leading up to that point, but the funding seems to sit when we place people. As such. So I know Work Ready are looking at a mentoring program or ways to do that, but even that needs to be tied into actual placements of people into work and that sort of stuff. So it's just flagging that maybe we need to show that tie or be able to measure that at some point just to assist with funding perhaps for the future.
Thank you. I think that's been noted, and probably doesn't need a response right now, but has been flagged, so thank you. That's
cool. And my last question was, fully supportive of the direction that the EDKB is looking with regards to their structure. That's all. My question though is, we've got an economic development strategy. Okay, now the EDKB has really been at arm's length with regards to independent with regards to the delivery of that strategy. How does that relationship work in that step? Because if you like, they're another step removed. Yet, does the ED strategy still sit within council, and they'll be looking at giving oversight to its delivery as such? Is that how the relationship works?
Pass the parcel.
So in terms of going forward, we still see that the EDKB would have a governance role in terms of the delivery of the strategy.
Yep.
They would still report to, in terms of regular reporting to this committee,
Yes.
but there would just be a level of more separation. The big thing in terms of the new structure is the ability for them to actually enter into things
Yes.
themselves and have their own vehicle to do that.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. That's my questions. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Wilson, and then Community Board Member Simon Black, and then we'll look for someone to move the recommendations.
Having heard this unfettered flow of idealism, I've just introduced a note of pragmatism here. I do have a question. In terms of community feedback, I wonder if one of the questions we should ask the community is, should we be giving $500,000 a year to Wellington NZ? And initially, I was feeling quite sorry for David Perks, because I was thinking, he's the CE of Wellington NZ. He'd be sitting down there in an office all on his own, just a desk in a corner. But he's got 251 staff to work with, so he's not as lonely as I thought he was. The question must be, how many of those 251 people are fully engaged in giving us our $500,000 worth? And in the last 10 years, because it's been, so I'll do the numbers because I'm quite good at maths, 5 million plus that we've contributed. And so one of the questions, I personally think, if you went out to the community and said, do you think we should give Wellington NZ $500,000 of your money every year, or do you think we've got a guy up here, Darren Grant and Mark Wood, they're quite clever, and their team, and don't you think they could spend that money better? It's just slightly rhetorical.
Was there a question, Councillor
Well,
Wilson,
that's the
on
question.
this?
Do you think we should ask the community that question in terms of community feedback on page, we'll call it 52? Because I think I can anticipate what the response would be. I think we would do it a lot better here. So, so there's the question for you. Do you think we should ask the community that directly in terms of the community feedback?
If you would like us to add an additional question to the engagement focus on the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board's proposition for the strategy refresh, we're happy to do so. I will note, though, that you have Wellington NZ coming to speak to you shortly in February, where you will be able to ask them directly about the value of spend, be it 5 million or 500,000 per annum, and we'd take your guidance on that point.
Okay. I guess by my calculation, we will have donated about another 200,000 to them by then, by the time we get to have a chat with them. And you can't unpick these things quickly, so it does take time. This was mentioned about, about a year ago. And so in that year, like I say, we've donated another $500,000 on behalf of ratepayers. So if there was going to be an alternative mechanism, and one has already been suggested, that takes time. There are some long-term plan implications here as well, because the current mechanism is that those funds are rated for via the Greater Wellington's rates. So if we were of a mind to change that arrangement, that would then have to become our rating. So there are impacts. I think they become financially neutral, and this is probably not the right time for the discussion, but I think.
I think that the response I wanted to make was yes, agree. We have had some discussions with Wellington NZ and Greater Wellington around this, because it has been raised several times. which is why John Allen and team are coming out to talk to you in February. Now is the time to have the discussion because we are in long-term plan zone. I think currently, I do hear your point about continuing to spend money. Effectively, we're locked into this arrangement through the current long-term plan. And so there isn't the opportunity to decide to chop and change now for what was agreed in the last long-term plan. For a whole bunch of reasons, it would be too hard to shift it between years. Effectively, though, I want to say that there are conversations underway that we are raising the concerns, not only of you, but from some of our business community, and we're expecting to get a good response from them in February when they come out.
Did you have a further question, or is
Well,
this a conversation
just
we
a
can
point
take
of
offline?
clarification, actually, because I was under the understanding that we can add and subtract to the long-term plan pretty much any time we like, if there's a will to. I mean, in the past, we've had things in the long-term plan. For instance, Te Rahi was in the long-term plan,
We'll just
and
get
then
a
it wasn't.
brief
So,
response to
yeah,
this, but
well,
then,
yeah. So that's the question
carry on.
is, you know, I think we have sufficient elasticity to do with the long-term plan what we think is in the best interest of the long-term plan.
Agree. I think it's the complexity around changing the arrangements. So, for example, Greater Wellington is currently invoicing our residents for that 500,000. It would be a rates change for us, which we would have to go out and explain to our community and consult on to be able to then add it to our rates regime, and we'd have to make adjustments and changes here to be able to then start collecting that as well. So you are going to be talking about our rates regime shortly in our LTP conversation, and that might be the space to have this discussion just to understand your options. I guess I just wanted to say in this meeting that we're very aware of concerns. We're very aware that you are wanting us to put on the table some options, and we are progressing that. It's just I can't answer that in the session today.
Yeah. But thanks for responding. Yeah.
Can I make
that, though.
a comment in terms of the current situation? In terms of the current situation, so we are proactively working with Wellington NZ to get more support for local business and local business economic development initiatives. So the board has a direct relationship with John Allen as well, where there are requests for funding made to Wellington NZ, and they do support different initiatives. We are also working more closely with their team to get them more visible here in Kāpiti as well. So obviously there's a longer term situation, but in terms of the interim, we're trying to make sure as much as possible we get as much return on that $500,000.
And I think it's important to note, though, that the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board has raised the same concerns. So they've said they really want to see more action. So on all fronts, there's a common message coming through.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Wilson. I feel like we've kind of fleshed out the Wellington NZ point, and we've got some assurance that there is work being done in that space to be brought back to us. So we might just park that and then carry on with questions specifically relevant to the direction of travel. Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Darren and Mark. Love the direction's heading. My questions are picking up on a point that Councillor Nigel Wilson also raised about page 52, community feedback. I think these sort of decisions are about education of the business community and getting feedback from the right people at the right time. So what are the mechanisms of communication and feedback we're getting from actual businesses on the ground?
So in terms of businesses, so the team already have existing channels in terms of, basically email, or, newsletter lists and all those sorts of things. There's a regular engagement through different events and activities. And then there's also the direct relationships in terms of the day-to-day activities as well. So there's a range of different channels that we'll be, using and utilising for engagement and feedback, and also as well as using the hubs and all those sorts of things. So various different channels, we have things like the cluster groups that have been established as well. But there's any more you want to add to that?
I would like to add that we are also, as part of our ecosystem, working, I think, really nicely with the Chamber and KIDA and making sure that we're looking at all avenues to be getting the message out, to be working alongside each other to make sure that actually collectively in the business community we're getting a chance to support / have your say and encourage people to get involved.
Excellent. My question is directed because if I were to go down, let's say, Riverbank Road, knock on a door, and ask one of the businesses there, hey, did you know about this? What would they say? You know, do we know who we're not actually communicating with, who we're missing out on? You know, I'm taking this kind of observation from, let's say, the Māori ward survey, where there's very much a certain part of the whole population, you know, a very small sector of it actually had quite a big voice in that. I'm just wondering, are we actually understanding our reach?
Just to add to what's been said, the business associations are another conduit. So we're in close contact with chairs of business associations on matters that may be of interest to those specific catchments. It's been a staged process, so today's the big day for the outing of the DOT, and after that we have an end-of-year newsletter planned. The Mayor also mentioned it in her speech to the Electra Business Breakfast that we're going to engage with the business community on the direction of travel as soon as it gets signed off. So it is very much the next step, and we've been very keen to make sure that in our personal meetings that we are indicating we're refreshing our ED strategy, and we've had tons of discussions about it with the businesses that we engage with, which are in a couple of hundred businesses that we go around talking to.
You might be asking a specific question. I'm thinking, Simon, about Ōtaki, because you did mention Riverbank Road, and after this item we're talking about a paper where we're talking about standing up a business association for Ōtaki and Te Horo, which means there isn't that in place at the moment. So we're well aware that there are gaps, and I think just to add to the comments that Mark and Darren have made, is the team is out in the community. We do go out and talk to businesses. We are working in different parts of the district to make sure, I'm not going to say we're one-on-one with every business, but we are checking in different areas on how things are going. We can make sure that we add to our proposed engagement that we do cover off the areas where there may be gaps to make sure that everybody knows about this and has an opportunity to get engaged. I will add, though, also through community boards. We will be coming out to community boards and sharing with you these direction of travel. So if you have connections or want to put a call out to the community to say, hey guys, just in case you've missed it, there's an opportunity here, we'd really appreciate that support as well.
Thank you. Look forward to the establishment and funding of a business network in Ōtaki. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Feed, and then we'll look for someone to move the recommendations.
All right, thank you. Just briefly back to Councillor Wilson's question around the Wellington NZ funding. I'm not digging into that again, but I guess the issue is really the community's question around the return on that investment. That's actually what we're talking about there and the concerns. So coming back to Councillor Pravanov's question, which was essentially around, are we growing the overall pie? Is the economy in Kāpiti growing? And that just made me wonder. We've got a EDKB that we're funding. We've got an economic development team that we're funding. That's quite a hefty investment. Do we have measures to quantify the return on those investments in economic terms for our community?
I'm going to say the short answer is yes. Under the current economic development strategy, we have been reporting back to council, in fact this committee actually, 6 monthly reports on progress. And I'm going to say carefully, because I think if you're a numbers person, you'll get attribution. I'm not at all going to suggest that the growth that we're seeing in the community is only as a result of this work, but growth in our community has been in the upward swing, despite the impact of COVID, despite lockdown, despite a number of things. We have been an outstanding outlier, if you like, district nationally. So other districts have not have not enjoyed the same growth in a number of areas that we have. So we're aware of the belief that the support and work and response we've been making in the community has helped to bolster our community through this period. So team might want to add to that, but that's what I think you can see.
look, I think, when we set the last strategy, we're in the middle of COVID. It was so hard to know what was going to happen. We've definitely got a better understanding of what's going on in the economy. And I think, in terms of the measures that have been proposed in this, direction of travel, it's trying to make sure that we can be more accountable going forward for our activity. So always room for improvement.
Sure. Right. Just in answer to Councillor Provanov's question, I thought the response was uncertain, but that gives me a little bit more clarity. So thank you.
Thanks, Beej. Seeing as there are no more questions, Councillor Coe, I think, has signalled she would like to move. Yep. Cool. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Halliday, right of introduction, Councillor Coe. Oh, just your mic, sorry. Go for it.
Yeah. Look, this has been a really long journey, and just to put it in perspective, this goes back to the 2015 to 2018 Economic Development Strategy, where there was a proposal to set up an independent board and that there would be an evolutionary process for that organisation over a number of years to gradually move it, slightly further away from council, enable it to tap into resources that council itself can't tap into. So our first attempt at doing that was a big, where's that buzzer, the one that Simon Cowell uses? So here we are again. Here we are again. We had to go back to square one and set up the new revised version of the independent board, which is the EDKB. Now, to me, the absolute pivotal aspect of this direction of travel is putting the EDKB into a legal structure, using trusts and SPVs, which will enable it to do things in its own right and enable it to leverage funding, from other sources. So that was always the plan, right from way back in 2014 or so, and I think the Mayor will recall that she was involved in that first strategy as well as a councillor, and will remember some of those discussions. So to me, this is the EDKB growing up. It's moving from babyhood into taking its first real steps in the world, and it's absolutely vital that we progress to enable it to make a real difference to our economy. We've heard how our economy has low levels of income on a regional basis and probably even a national basis, and that's thanks to, well, firstly, we have a lot of superannuitants in our area. We have an older population, but we also have a lot of our jobs within the district here are low-paying jobs, working in retirement villages, rest homes, retail, those kind of positions. And so we have to really change that. We also, as well as lifting incomes, we also need to make jobs available within our area, because we know that something like 40% of people commute outside our district. So it's not an overnight thing. So yes, we're hoping for gains in GDP, but it's going to be a slow burn to get there. We've been under-resourced in economic development for a very long period of time. This is something where we need to, as Chris was saying earlier, get the fundamentals in place, get the structure there, then get some resource in behind it, both from council and from other sources, potentially claw back some of that money from Wellington NZ, and then really start to get things moving. So this is a turning point for the EDKB and for economic development in Kāpiti. So I really urge you to support the direction of travel as outlined here. It is a high-level document. There's a whole lot of detail sitting in underneath it, which is not part of this paper. I'm really excited by the opportunities that are presenting themselves now. We are on the cusp of making a real difference to our economy with some key initiatives around the food and beverage cluster, around the education side of things. There's lots going on, and this is just, by moving into these structures, it's going to just really clear the way for those things to progress very rapidly. So I urge you, my fellow elected members, to really get in behind this and make sure it's set up and resourced properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Been a long haul, hasn't it, Liz? Great that we're at where we're at. I guess just a few things. I'm just going to throw some thank yous in and a few just a few points. The importance of these things is building a strong foundation. It's once getting the ball rolling and landing it, but it's also then building the foundations before you go running off and trying to organise too much stuff. Otherwise, it just collapses, becomes top heavy, as such. And I commented on the previous paper about our community champions who put their hands up to get involved in the community. And I just want to thank you, Liz, in the same vein. I know it was a last-minute decision to put your hand up to come to this table, but I think a big driver for that would have been for you wanting to see this be landed and to make sure you're a part of that. And I guess from my perspective, it's been very comforting having you in that space as a tables representative in the EDKB and the Tourism Board and that sort of scenario there to help keep things on track. But that's also working in partnership with a great team that we've got, an economic development team as well. And I acknowledge you, I acknowledge the people that we have in the room in this space. If you brought the sustainability stuff along, kicking and screaming, but each time I see a report, the numbers are going up with people that are joining in there. Some fresh energy coming in, looking forward to see how that all works out. But also the stability with regards to as we're moving forward as well is really, really appreciated. And it must be rewarding, I hope, that to see that there is a difference being made in this space. And like Liz, I'm very excited. I think we're on a cusp of some really cool things. We're very fortunate up here, as we know, because that's why we live here, and that sort of thing. But I was handing out flyers on our vision stuff at the railway station this morning, and had that exact conversation with a lady who's looking at buying a house up here, but would love to be working up here, and works in a government department, and actually I think she worked in health, but would prefer to be working up here, but just can't find a job up here. As such. So we're certainly heading in the right direction, and certainly heading in the direction I think our community wants, because there's just, and COVID changed everything. There's these tweets that's, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday workers in central Wellington. It's changed the whole dynamic of the Golden Mile. It's changed the whole dynamic of the food and beverage operation down there, because people are working in town Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays, but they're working at home on Mondays and Fridays. We're benefiting for that. And part of what we've been looking at with regards to our wellbeing strategies and other strategies is how do we make our place the fun, enjoyable place where people want to live, play and work, so that your office is the cafe down the road or it's a table at the beach, because we can do that here, and I think it's very, very, very exciting. So I just want to say thank you to the team. Thanks thanks Liz for making sure we're on track and getting where we're going, and looking forward to the next 3 years with regards to see how this all comes through.
Agreed. Great, kōrero. Bede Larissy.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess just for context, I'm somebody with 3 retail businesses in the district, a professional services business, founder of Ōtaki Village Business Association, Deputy Chair of Chamber of Commerce for the 3rd year in a row. I sit on the KETA board. I taught business management for around 10 years. I'm heavily reliant on the strength of the economic environment in Kāpiti. So this sort of thing is of concern to me. As soon as I saw the structure for the EDKB, I found it inspiring. I think conceptually it's brilliant, it's simple, it provides a strong base in its structure with the ability to grow agilely, and has huge potential to be of benefit to all sectors of the community if we're smart about how we use it. So to the team that put that together, well done. I think it's excellent, and look forward to seeing how it develops. Thank you.
Cool. On that note, that's been moved by Councillor Coe, seconded by Councillor Halliday. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Oh, did you want to have a right of reply? Sorry, I completely... No. That was totally my bad. No. Okay. Well, that's been carried. So thank you so much, Mark and Darren. Awesome work. Cool. Oh yes, of course. I was like, wait, do we need to have a shift? No, of course we don't. Okay, thank you for that conversation and for that report. So moving on to item 8.3, Elevate Ōtaki Next Steps. Just before we kick into an introduction of the report and questions on that introduction or anything within the report that people want to delve into. I am aware that there's an alternative set of recommendations that have been crafted by several people, including some input from Chris. So thank you, Chris, for your work very quickly on that. So I'm even just wondering if, while the paper's being introduced, we can put those on the screen so that people can start to have a read, and that some of the wording of the new set of recommendations might help to answer some of those questions that people might have. But yeah, other than that, I will pass over to Chris and then Darren and Mark.
Thank you. I will say we've had several conversations around effectively elevate Ōtaki and next steps, and that is the focus of this paper. But in this paper essentially is proposing that we will close Elevate Ōtaki, thank that board for the work that they have done, and we're seeking your agreement to establish an Ōtaki and Te Horo Business Association, and that the portion of funding provided from Waka Kotahi would go straight to that business association. A change in recommendation that you will now see on the board is that previously we were proposing to make some recommendations around the balance of funding, which is around 60,000, just over 60,000. But instead we are proposing to come back to you in the new year with some additional information, allowing a bit more discussion time around the opportunities that sit across the district, and that once you have that information, we'd be looking to make a further decision around that. So just a slight change. But the key thrust of this paper was, number one, just to reset the situation in Ōtaki. So those first three recs, and then to come back to you on next steps. And those next steps would be including consideration really of the balance of what is left to be done in Ōtaki that can be brought to the table. The Economic Development Kotahitanga Board Chair being able to support us to have a look at the balance of the ED strategy refresh that need in Ōtaki, and giving some advice on next steps. So that's essentially what we're asking for in this paper now. And I may just hand over to the team to see if they want to add anything more. And that's take it as
Great. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, so the People's Republic of Te Horo is currently part of the Kingdom of Waikanai. Yeah, the bits that count.
All right, let's keep moving with your question.
So politically, the Waikanai Community Board, for instance, funded $20,000 to the establishment of a Waikanai Business Association, which were at some pains to point out that Te Horo was part of that deal. So has the the question is, has there been a discussion with the Waikanai Business Association, who currently think that Te Horo is part of their rohi, or so just where's that at?
Yes, there has been discussion about that, and the chairs of those, or not chair of the Ōtaki one at the moment, but the party that's leading the charge in terms of that work, they've sort of agreed that it's up to the businesses. They could be part of both, or they could pick one or the other, and it's actually they want to work together in terms of how they can support business. So they're not making businesses choose. They're actually sort of say it's up to businesses to make the decision themselves.
Yeah. I do know that part of the brief too was that the Waikanai Business Association, that was going to be really cheap to join if you're a business. So it's not like there's a significant financial investment. And yeah, I mean, people are presented with the option of being part of both, then great, why wouldn't you, So yeah, no, that's cool.
And I think in terms of membership, it's about making sure you do get some income, because the toughest thing for the business association is being sustainable.
Yeah. Cool. I'm not seeing any other questions. So
I
is
have
there
another
someone?
question.
Oh, Councillor Pravanov. Yep.
Yeah, so thank you. Through the chair, my question relates to, I suppose it's also to do with Te Horo. So it talks about setting up this new Ōtaki Te Horo Business Association, but I also note in the strategy that's been presented before us, there's absolutely no mention of Te Horo businesses in that. It's very, very Ōtaki business focused. Can I have an explanation why Te Horo isn't mentioned in that, please?
Is that the one that attached to the paper?
Correct.
That'll
Sorry, that has, so maybe I'll take a step back. Part of this is closing Elevate Ōtaki, and that strategy is something that was developed by Elevate Ōtaki. So essentially, we're handing that into the new business association to pick up components of things that were planned. That does not mean that additional things will be identified by that business association for which they may want to or agree to pursue. So it was more, we wanted to make sure that we incorporated it and didn't lose it, because it's a really great piece of work. And when we come back and talk to you next year about other opportunities with the remaining funding in Ōtaki, there'll be further conversation about that. Some of those items may well not fall within the business association.
So a further question to that, I see that that strategy was signed off in November last year. So I can't understand, or could I have an explanation of why this new group is being set up now, when there's obviously been a lot of thought that's gone into developing the strategy, when Te Horo wasn't even considered at that point in time? And I suppose moving forward, how can a strategy that's now very newly been signed off going to include Te Horo?
I suppose in terms of that strategy, it was led by the work of Elevate Ōtaki in terms of the focus for them, as part of the ongoing engagement that they've had since, as things have evolved, there's a realisation that they need to be looking broader than just that area. And so what the purpose of in terms of the new business association is to have a wider focus and a wider remit. And what I think you'll see is that strategies like this will actually start to sort of grow in terms of actually their focus and those sorts of things. So, I think for me, this strategy was a moment of time in terms of the existing group that was there to put this in place. And there's a realisation that there needs to be wider inclusion moving forward. And this is why the change from the current model to the proposed business association moving forward.
Thank you.
Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, one observation, one question. So, yeah, just because we've got political boundaries doesn't mean we actually exclude businesses based on that. It was always part of our engagement to actually have the wider area in mind. Likewise, Chris, the first retail strategy, I think they've done some work with Raumati as well. And this is part of a integrated strategy across the whole coast, right? It's not just isolated strategies here. So that's what we'd like to implement. And my question is just to confirm that the remaining funds will remain in Ōtaki for Ōtaki. That's the clear intention here?
I think you're directing that at me. I'm going to say the proposal that's on the table and the new recommendation D is that we're going to hold the funds here. They won't be spent. You're coming back. Oh, sorry, some of the funds, but the funds in recommendation D are going to be held here in our ED team bank, ring-fenced, but they will not be touched. That you will be coming back to have a further conversation about that in the new year. So that's what that recommendation says.
Yep.
And you will have the opportunity to discuss and table the opportunities that you see and for that to come to the table. We did not think we had the time, given the meeting is today, to have got across all of that material for this group. and this is the last strategy and ops meeting for this year.
That's great. I just wanted to clarify that these funds were not up for grabs. They were going to be, it's not where it's going to be spent, it's how in Ōtaki it's going to be spent. That's what I want to clarify. That's up for discussion, is it?
Yeah. That's for a further conversation early in the new year, as Chris has mentioned. Yeah. But that'll be a great opportunity to put whatever proposal or ideas that people have on the table. So, yeah.
Because that other observation is that they were designated for Ōtaki. Thank you.
And last question, Bede Larissy.
Okay, thank you. A couple of questions. Councillor Pravanov, I'm finding you inspiring this morning. So the question was around whether Te Horo was included in Ōtaki's first retail group strategy, and that just made me wonder, there was also a first retail group strategy done for Waikanai. Was Te Horo included in that one? No. Okay, so it's sort of not in either. Okay. So a slightly unrelated question. Was the chair of the Ramadi Village Business Association promised $5,000 of Ōtaki's funding in September this year?
I can respond to that and say, I do not believe that any formal decisions have been made by this committee to allocate funding.
But was a promise made?
So there was a briefing and we discussed an approach that might be determined or agreed by you here.
I'm not talking about the briefing we had in council. I'm talking about a member of staff making a promise to the chair. I'm not the chair of the Ramadi Business.
Right.
It wasn't made to me. I'm just would like clarification as to whether that promise was made.
As part of this process, which has evolved, as I said earlier, we've engaged with the chairs of existing business associations, including that chair, to hypothetically understand need and circa, if you had availability of funds, how would you spend it? And that conversation was very fruitful in helping us understand the priorities of Raumati Village Business Association at the time. No, it wasn't promised.
Okay, thank you.
Jocelyn, do you have a really quick question?
Yes, I have. So in the report it mentions $10,000. I am just wondering, so the Ōtaki Community Board received $20,000. I'm interested to know whether that was spent on any of these business associations.
Sorry, can we just clarify the $20,000 that you're talking about?
Yes, so all community boards were given 2 lots of $20,000. And as Councillor Wilson mentioned, $20,000 from the Waikanai Community Board was given to a newly developed Waikanai Business Association.
Yeah, Jocelyn, I'm not 100% sure this is relevant to the
Well, it is
elevator
because
Ōtaki next steps. Could we take it offline though? Is that okay? Does it impact the way that you're seeing the recommendations on the table as they are?
Well, it does, I suppose.
new one?
It's a case of whether that money, if it wasn't spent in that area, obviously the priority wasn't actually considered to be important at that point in time.
I think maybe we can bring this back early next year when we have the conversation around the funding that's going to be held with the economic development team. Is that okay, Jocelyn?
Okay,
But it's
thank
been
you.
flagged. It's been
Thank you.
It's been noted by staff. Thank you. All right. Is there someone who would like to move? Councillor Warwick, seconded. Councillor Cofford, would you like a right of introduction, Councillor Warwick?
Yep. So this funding came back onto the table because the community board, following feedback from the community, had felt that the community wanted a bit of a refresh of the Elevate Ōtaki project, and just to take a look at how we can apply a wider brush to the Ōtaki community, the businesses, get some new input, some new ideas. And when we flagged the need for this refresh, we certainly didn't say that the job was done. The purpose of Elevate Ōtaki was to support business in Ōtaki with the Pekapeka to Ōtaki Expressway. We're still feeling the effects of that, even though it's opened. So there's according to the person who wrote the strategy, this is the time where we most need the support for our Ōtaki businesses. So in the last couple of months, we've lost Billabong, which was a big draw card for Ōtaki. We've also lost New Zealand Natural. And it's really kind of we've got to make sure that the rest of our businesses don't leave town, because then we're going to be a ghost town. We need to give businesses some confidence to stay in Ōtaki and to come and fill up the shops that are there. We need, to become that destination that we've been for a while for outlets. And this funding, the residual Waka Kotahi funding, will give us the ability to regroup, to stand up a resilient, sustainable business group, bringing in some new ideas. We've already kind of committed around our table to have some meetings prior to Christmas, our meeting prior to Christmas, and then progress this through January. We've got Kim Tahiwi on board very much so. We have a retail strategy that hasn't been delivered, so we need to go back over that. Certainly the 60,000 that's remaining, we intend to be staying in our community. And so, yes, we'll have to come up with a plan to put to the rest of you, a good plan. And, we've got a lot of disruption ahead. We've got bridge closure, revocation. That's all going to create uncertainty. So we've got to create certainty for our community and our businesses. And that's all of our businesses, our township, our the Riverbank Road businesses. And I think when you talk about Te Horo, the thing is, for most Ōtaki people, Te Horo has always been part of Ōtaki anyway. So when we say Ōtaki, we're not saying Ōtaki to the Te Horo boundary, we're saying Ōtaki Te Horo, and actually, north into Manukau as well, because traditionally that was Ōtaki's area. We were Te Horo, Manukau, Oho, that was all part of Ōtaki. So I think we can apply that broader brush to this money, but we've got to have the opportunity to do that, and the Community Board is very committed to bringing back a new, refreshed, not Elevate, whatever it gets called, to drive some good stuff within our community that will lead into our revocation and telling our story, giving businesses the confidence to come and be part of our community and know that they're going to be supported. So I'd really like the table to support this recommendation today, please.
Thanks, Councillor Warwick. And just to confirm for the table, if there was anything that wasn't clear, that this set of recommendations that's now on the table is an alternative set of recommendations that has been moved and seconded. So this is what we're debating, what's on the screen. Councillor Coe.
Thank you. I want to speak to this primarily as somebody who operates a business in Te Horo, believe it or not, but also as a long-standing champion of economic development in Kāpiti. And I think this exemplifies why we need a very strong business support ecosystem in Kāpiti, because we have a number of organisations involved in business here. We have the Chamber, we have KIDA, we have EDKB, we have business associations, a host of organisations that are currently not working together very particularly well to support each other. And I believe that the EDKB has a role to do that kind of coordination and make sure that each of these groups are not doing things in isolation and that they are sufficiently resourced. So I am, absolutely Ōtaki needs support. I think the performance from Elevate Ōtaki was disappointing, to say the least. I think it's appropriate that it be closed down and that a local long-standing business, business association be set up for the long future ahead. But I'm concerned that a business association is left on its own to sort things out when it actually needs an ecosystem around it to help it grow. And that's why I think it's appropriate to have the EDKB in the mix there, because, and I think it's one of the reasons why Elevate Ōtaki not exactly failed but underperformed, that there needs to be support from the likes of Chamber, the Akita, other business associations, the EDKB, to wrap themselves around what's happening in Ōtaki to enable it to succeed and to get things done. Because, the people that are involved in that business association are busy running their own businesses. They're time poor, and they don't necessarily have the right expertise to oversee all the different elements of a plan to take Ōtaki forward. The strategy that was done by First Retail is very comprehensive, but it's also complex in that it needs coordination in terms of what's happening with the revocation process, what's happening with the business association, what's happening, economy-wide really. And so it needs some really high-level input and direction and to keep it on track. And I feel a little bit nervous about just leaving an Ōtaki and Tahoro Business Association doing that on their own. I think this raises the question of how we support a business support ecosystem in Kāpiti, where if we've got particular issues within our economy, we can all get together and collectively solve the problems with the right backing, the right expertise, etc. So I think there's actually two problems we're discussing here. One is what to do with the money from Elevate Ōtaki, and one is how do we properly resource our business support ecosystem in Kāpiti. And I think alongside tackling this issue next year, we need another paper, which I think will probably come out of some discussions we're having around the startup ecosystem, around how we adequately support the business support ecosystem in Kāpiti.
Great, thank you, Councillor Coe. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. So I agree with a lot of the comments that Councillor Coe has made, and actually I'd like to draw also your attention to the recommendation C there. So there's actually a lot going on in that recommendation. One is that it's allocating money. The other one is it's being transferred to the new Ōtaki Tahoro Business Association, which hasn't been set up. And then for the purpose of delivering the First Retail strategy, which is attached to the document. So I hear what Councillor Warwick has said, saying that Ōtaki means Te Horo, etc., etc. But I'd like to draw your attention to page 88 in the document that shows very clearly the focus area. This is solely the business area in Waikanai. In Te Horo. I'll say it again. It solely focuses on the business area in Ōtaki. And then the following page, page 89, reiterates this. So there is definitely no inclusion of Te Horo in this. So I would like to suggest that each of these recommendations are taken separately, because if not, I may be voting against some of them. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor Pravanov. Thanks for foreshadowing that's how you'd like the recommendations be dealt with. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I agree with Comrade Coe about where this might go. I just wondered, two questions really. One was around Wakako Tahi's 49K. Now, I don't know if anybody's had a chat with Wakako Tahi, and is there any requirement for, because it's going to be spent differently than it was originally assigned, so is there any requirement to go back to them? And if we did, I think this is an excellent opportunity for Waka Kotahi to invest some more money in the Ōtaki Te Horo community, given there, as being pointed out by Shelley, there are going to be some serious demands made of the people of Ōtaki as far as the roading's concerned over the next goodness knows how long. So yeah, it might be an ideal opportunity for Waka Kotahi to raise the stakes a bit more, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to do that. Business, just a note. I'm sure the business associations are wonderful. Councils in the past have created monsters. They didn't realise they were monsters at the time. It's a bit like when you have babies and they're lovely and then they become teenagers. So the note of caution there is that when you have a business association, I think it's really important that councils are engaged with them, because what tends to happen is they can set up as opposition parties to council, and so yeah, that's just the note of caution, is to continue to work with community boards so that they're part of it. And I buy into, again, Comrade Coe was totally onto this collectivism, sort of socialist line that she's going down. I embrace that fully. Having the likes of Kida, I'm on the board of the Chamber, Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce, Kida, our business development team, the EDKB, all of these various groups, the more they can collectivise in their decision making, the less they're in competition with each other and are complementary to what each other is doing. I think the outcomes will be way better. Yeah.
Kia ora, thanks, Councillor Wilson. Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for the discussion. Yeah, look, I agree that the Elevate Ōtaki's performance possibly could have been a lot better. And what we're trying to attempt here is to actually go from just a project-based approach to now going to BAU and establish, a business network, a formal business network, which we don't currently have. What I would have expected, and in discussion with Chris from First Retail, is that he has a strategy there. And what we need to do is use this funds to actually establish that base business network. We have names of people who can do this, who have worked with Chris before and live in Ōtaki as well. And so I do endorse these recommendations. And I think there are two steps to it as well. It's one, actually looking at Ōtaki. There's so much opportunity in Ōtaki with tourism, and bringing these businesses together, being a destination and a retail network is just part of that. And then the overall strategy, which the multiple engagements with retail first retail, of combining that strategy all up and down the district. And how do we get these linkages in? So with the right oversight, we'll make sure that those linkages are there, but yet we need this here to establish at least the core of that business community. And then let's carry over that 60,000 to say, right, what in the wider picture do we need to actually link that in to have the best effect for Ōtaki? So I would recommend that we support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Bede.
Thank you. Again, support Councillor Coe with the idea that we need to be working more collectively. Obviously, Chamber has a strong role in that and very supportive of that, despite my, if I put on my business association hat and be more parochial, I'd be against that, but I take the bigger view. I'm kind of, as a community board chair, very supportive of Ōtaki keeping its money. I don't think we should ever have been discussing taking it away once it's promised. And bigger picture there, why are we talking about breaking promises? I think there's a real question of organisational integrity if we're suddenly making promises to people and then pulling them. It happens from time to time, but it always leaves wounds. So supportive of keeping that, but also supportive of supporting other business associations across the district as well, and looking at how we can do that. I was part of a group of 4 people that started a business association in the middle of the first COVID lockdown. We had to start by Zoom. We had no input or support by council, and in November of that year had a big public event that thousands of people turned up to. With no external funding, things can happen without council support. Council support doesn't necessarily make it succeed. We do need the people in those groups to be willing to put their time and effort into making it happen, but we do need the support as well. So yeah, good to see the money staying in Ōtaki.
Mayor Holbrook.
Yeah, first of all, just to be clear, it was never being pulled from Ōtaki. Just the Ōtaki still had the opportunity to retain the money there. It wasn't going to be allocated elsewhere. But I do like the idea that it's kept specifically there. I'd like to refer to Councillor Warwick's right of introduction. It was very powerful what we heard from Councillor Warwick today about the struggle that's going on there and the need for us to put these resources in there. And thanks to her and the board for mounting this argument to keep the money there. I also want to acknowledge the other community board chairs for their care for the whole district, not just being parochial about their own areas. So I think that really bodes well. I'm a little bit confused that we're starting to have a conversation about business networks and things like that as a result of these recommendations. To me, that conversation was part of the Economic Development Strategy Direction of Travel paper that we just had, and it talks about how we're bringing sectors together and how we're bringing networks of different clusters together across the district. And I think we've got some really strong work going on there by our economic development team at the moment. I'm also grateful that Bede mentioned the Chamber of Commerce, because that's really key in terms of that broader picture as well. But what we're talking about here is this allocation of this $60,000. And in D, where it says the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board is going to provide further advice, I just want to encourage us not to make the group in Ōtaki and the people who are doing that work jump through too many hoops, because we heard from Councillor Warwick about the need for some action up there. So I don't want us to get bogged down in 3 versions of strategies and what we're now implementation plans, which we're now calling direction of travel. What we've got in front of us is actually a really strong document already, the retail plan. And to me, that is almost enough already for us to press on with allocating these funds and doing some work. I'm also aware that there's some roadworks up there with the clip-on, which is going to make it even more challenging. So I just want us to support Ōtaki in really getting going and doing some actions that are really going to make a tangible difference in the short term, because we really need to support them as much as possible. There's also the revocation work that's coming up, and that's going to have an impact on businesses as well. So, yeah, look forward to seeing what happens in the business space up there. I just wanted to reply to Councillor Pravanov, because we might not have to take these separately, that C says, for the purposes of developing on the retail first strategy, which is what the map is part of, and supporting local businesses. And it's the and supporting local businesses which pulls into Horo, Manukau, and all of those other areas. And we've heard from the ward councillor a commitment to look after those areas. Whether there's a map in our documents that says something different, I don't think is really, I would trust them at their word that they're going to include those other areas. So yeah, thanks for the work that's gone into this, and for the elected members for coming up with some recommendations around this which seem to be palatable to everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Halliday, and then...
Yeah, I'll be
we'll-
brief. I wasn't going to comment in this space because I think everything needed to be said has been said. But I just took a little bit exception to one of the comments the Mayor just made. Recommendation D is pretty clear on the previous thing that, and I read here that the $60,000 be ring-fenced for support for business associations across the Kāpiti coast. That's pretty clear. That's taking the funds out of the area. So there might have been some intent somewhere, but that
Sorry,
was what was said.
just making
And-
sure you're referring to the alternative
yeah,
recommendations.
no. She was saying that wasn't the intent of the initial ones. Now, the reason I bring that up is it just shows the importance of words, and why I say that is, I am sure all the community board members in Ōtaki, and I'm sure Shelley, have put a truckload of work into addressing the situation over the past 3 or 4 days. Having been in those sort of situations myself, there would have been panic. There would have been, I'm sure, a lot of sleeplessness and that sort of scenario there as well. So there are repercussions for how things are worded in regards to that. And I just wanted to acknowledge that as well, because I know a lot of work has gone in by the community board and by Shelley with regards to addressing these particular recommendations. The rights or wrongs of why they're there, and I appreciate the intent that they were put there for with regards to that broadness. Okay, and the Ōtaki Community Board's done their job and come out and pushed back, which is very, very important, and that sort of stuff there as well. But just wanted to acknowledge it, not a negative, and I don't want to finish on a negative because it's great to see these funds being used in such a positive way, regardless of how they're being applied, and that sort of stuff. At the end of the day, they will be going towards supporting business, taking on board what Councillor Coe was saying. We need to be sure that we're bringing together those different groups. From my perspective, what's come out of the woodwork is the Māori Economic Development Group that are up in Ōtaki. It's going to be great to be pulling them into the equation as well, because so just wanted to note that. That was all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep.
I've already spoken, but may I have a quick word?
Just very briefly, yeah.
Just following on from what Martin said, yes, there is reference in the original recommendations to funding for Chamber, KEDA, maybe other business associations. And the reason that's in there is because those organisations do desperately need funding. That's why I talked about support for the business support ecosystem. So the whole purpose originally was to look at how can we provide funding for Chamber, KEDA, et cetera, et cetera. That's why we're having this debate. So I think we need to address that. But to me, there's two streams of work here. One is what do we do with Ōtaki, and one is what do we do with our business support system, and how do we fund those other organisations, because they're going to be actually critical in terms of helping Ōtaki. You know, KEDA provides mentoring. We can swing into action providing mentoring to businesses in Ōtaki. Chamber provides all sorts of, networking opportunities and access to funding through its Chamber network. They can be swinging into action to help Ōtaki. But we can't do that if we have no resource. KEDA is just, at the moment, limping along because it has no money. It's almost, it's operating at an extremely low level because it has no funding. So, we need to solve both sides of the equation here, not just one.
Yeah, point well made. And just before we pass over to Shelley for any right of reply, if she wants to make one, just want to acknowledge staff for their agility in this space too and working with us to develop up something that, it seems like, as the Mayor said, there's general support for, and we'll have a further conversation in the new year. Councillor Warwick, did you have a right of reply briefly?
Yep. So I would like to say thank you to Chris too, because she came in as our community board GM and we had some issues which were delicate, and she's dealt with them really professionally, and it's taken time, but we've come to this because there was issues around the next steps for Elevate Ōtaki basically. So thank you for working with us, because you heard us and you acted on it. So with regard to the Waka Kotahi funds, the purpose of that was to mitigate the effects of the PP20 bypassing Ōtaki, and certainly we're still in that effect. So that mitigation goes on because we're now still affected. Some businesses are doing really well, but obviously some businesses are not. And we've got to create an environment where people turn off and come to Ōtaki and spend their money, or arrive by CWB, as they come from Paraparumu, yeah, horse, bike, whatever. So I think the Waka Kotahi funds still doing the work that they were intended to do. We could always put in there, you know, transferred to an Ōtaki and Te Horo Business Association when it is established or to be established. If that's a problem for people, that's fine. Just a point of clarity too, it is first retail, not retail first.
Can we make that change?
So can we make that change on the recommendation?
So actually the error.
And also, I don't think there's any intention from the people who are wanting this, the business association and the progress to go forward, that we would not work with that, with independent of the EDKB or the chamber or anything, because we do need that expertise, and we do want it's about the district thriving. So actually, I don't think you can be at all worried that it won't be a collaboration. It's just that for Ōtaki, we really kind of, it's a bit nerve-wracking that we, you know, if we get bend on leaving in the cream shop or whatever, if we start to get businesses really kind of imploding and leaving, we're going to have nothing. So now is the time we need to stand up, get our ducks in a row, and do some work around this. So I think you've got a lot of commitment around our table and with Rob, and we're certainly going to work with the professionals. But there's a lot of people in Ōtaki, businesses who are busting to get in on this work that haven't had access to the funds or the plans or anything before. So there's a lot of will. And even last night I was out with the Ōtaki Community Women's Group who run the market, and Claire is just busting to get in on this. She's got a lot of skills to bring to the table. You know, a lot of plans for Ōtaki. We can just, yeah, I'd really like support over this with a few tweaks if we need to for this recommendation, and we'll work hard to bring back to you a really robust plan in February at the next SONF that you can support.
Epic leadership coming from Ōtaki, love it. Cool, so the recommendations as the alternate version have been moved and seconded. So Councillor Pravanov, did you still wanted to have these taken separately?
Yes, please.
Okay, cool. So we will take them separately when a member of the committee suggests or makes that plea, then yeah, it's upon us to do so.
Can I move that recommendation, please?
Oh, it's already been, so that has been moved and seconded.
Oh, sorry.
We're just voting on them separately, yeah. Cool, so recommendation A, all those in favour? Aye, against, that's carried. Recommendation B, all those in favour? Aye, against, that's carried. Recommendation C, all those in favour? Aye, against. Division, okay, all those in favour, please raise your hand.
Right, I have councillors Warwick, Coe, Halliday, Coford, Cooper, Spires, the Mayor, Wilson, and Hernford. Thank you.
And those against?
I
we
have
don't have any councillors
Councillor Pravanov. So 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9, 4, and 1 against.
So that is carried. Recommendation D. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Darren. Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate all the mahi. All right, we're on the home stretch. Should be done by 12:30. 8 more minutes. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, so confirmation of minutes on page 136. the minutes of the 16th of November 2023. Moved by Councillor Wilson, just bringing everyone's attention, seconded by Mayor Holbrook. What? Oh, you've just thirded it, but we've sussed it. Okay, all those in favour? Aye, against, that is carried. I will move that we move into public excluded. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Mayor Holbrook. We'll just turn off the live streaming. So I think we finished by 12:30. Oh, well done to you. Got there.